Welcome back to the Long Distance Work Life, where we help you lead, work, and thrive on remote and hybrid teams. I'm Marisa Eikenberry, a fellow remote worker, and joining me is my co-host and remote work expert, Wayne Trammell. Hi, Wayne.
Hey, that would be me. Hi, Marissa.
How are you doing today?
I am swell. I'm excited that today's topic is very fun and it's the kind of geeky thing that makes me happy. So,
Awesome. Well, for those of you who have been listening for a while, or maybe you just tuned into our Manager the Heartbeat episode, Wayne mentioned something called the Johari Window and said we need to talk about it in a future episode because we didn't have time right then. So today's the day, and we're going to talk about that. So, Wayne, why don't we start with what is the Johari Window?
the Johari Window is a model, and like all successful models, it's deceptively simple.
Right?
It's basically a good consultancy foursquare. These two psychologists in about 1955 came up with this. And it's an attempt to explain why people don't always understand each other and what makes sense. And so if you picture a square and there's things that are known to ourselves on the y-axis, and across the bottom, you've got things that are known to others, and you've got these four boxes, and they're basically, when it comes to yourself, there are things that you know about yourself.
Of course.
And then there are things that you don't know about yourself,
Right.
the little subconscious, unconscious things that we do. And then next to that, there are things others know about you. So there are things you know, and there are things that others know about you. Wayne is an extrovert, but not as much as we think he is. So if he gets tired and grumpy, leave him alone. He'll be all better. Everybody knows that.
You're right. And for those of you who are listening on audio, we're going to have a link to what this looks like in the show notes. And those of you that are watching on video, you're actually seeing the Johari Window or have already seen it in this episode.
So, we know that about Wayne. So if we're going to work with Wayne, he knows it. It's no surprise to him that he can be a grumpy, cranky old man. And everybody else knows it too, but he's harmless. And so no harm, no foul. But there are also things that they might not know, or that they might know that I don't.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So there's things I know that I know. There are things that I don't know. There are things about other people that I don't know, and there are things other people don't know about me. And that's essentially the model, and it makes sense. I think I used I used an example from the Gulf War where Donald Rumsfeld said there are things we know, there are things we know we don't know, there are things we don't know that we don't know. I mean,
right. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
and all of this is a way of saying that anytime you're in a work environment, communication is important. The more you share knowledge, the more you know and your colleagues or your boss or your customers know, the less chance there is for misunderstanding.
Right.
Now, the next question, because you are nothing if not a professional and you have a list.
Indeed, I do.
The next question, because I know that about Marissa. You see how that works? The next obvious question is, when we're talking about remote work,
yeah,
so
how does this apply?
Right. How does this apply? And the answer is that on one hand, like so much that we talk about here, it's exactly the same, right? When you're working on a team, if you don't share your motivations, if you don't share information that you know with your team, it makes it harder for them. There's better chance for misunderstanding. There's a chance the quality of the work won't be as good. But of course, in a in-person setting, there are cues and there are sort of things in the air that you pick up by osmosis. Something's bugging Marissa today. What's going on? I know that because I look at you and you get that little forehead scrunchy thing. and that's great. If the only contact I have with you is on Slack and you type me a message, I may not know that your forehead is scrunching and doing its thing. And so that's why it's important in a remote environment to intentionally and appropriately help people get access to information that they need.
Right. It's just like we talk about all the time. Like communication is super important and we need to be communicating with the members of our team and our managers and our leaders need to be communicating to the employees and you get the whole deal.
Well, I do. And here's the thing that I like about models,
Mhm.
none of them are perfect.
Of
There is no
course.
such thing as a perfect model. And Lord knows the human beings that the models apply to are not perfect.
Right.
But what I like is anything that I can look at that stops me in my tracks and says, hey, have you thought about this?
Yes.
Right? If we aren't getting the work done, if there's a lot of, maybe there's a lack of trust.
Okay.
Okay. Because I've worked with Marissa a few times and her work's okay. Doesn't, you know, here's the thing, if you're looking at the window, Marissa is going, hey, I'm working as hard as I can. I've never done this before.
Mhm.
I'm a little stressed. Wayne seems like a jerk. So if I screw up, it's gonna
Yeah, I don't
blow
want him to
back
yell at
on
me.
me. That's what's going on in your head,
Mhm.
right? I'm in the window of I don't know what's going on in your head. I'm only seeing the work product, and the work product, and this is obviously not true, dear
Of
listener,
course.
the work product is not what it should be. That's what I see,
Yeah, that makes sense.
right? Now, if we have a conversation and I go, the work product could have more detail to it.
Mhm.
What's going on? And we have a conversation, and you get to, well, I didn't want to overload you with detail because I was in a meeting one time and you said somebody talked too much. And so I was trying not to do that.
Right.
We can have a conversation about the appropriate level of detail that I need on this. And now we both know what we know,
Right, absolutely.
right? That's the thing, is that there needs to be more explicit conversations. And it's about things like, how does this affect you, right? Are
Mhm.
you confident in this? Are you unconfident in this? Those are sometimes uncomfortable conversations depending on your work style and your personality and who you're talking to and power structure and all kinds of things.
Right.
And they're critical. That's how you build trust. Because if there's a bunch of stuff in the I don't know this about her window,
Mhm.
there's a better likelihood of there being an unpleasant surprise. Or, I don't quite trust her because what I'm seeing isn't what she's saying. And so, to me, the value of this
Mhm.
is when at the first sign of something being off. There was a famous Sherlock Holmes story, so famous, of course, I don't remember the title of it, but the idea is that he knew that the killer knew the victim because the dog didn't bark,
Ah, yes, because it wasn't a stranger. Okay.
right? It wasn't a stranger. And so the fact that there wasn't a dog bark was actually the clue.
Mhm.
And very often in remote work, it's what you don't see, and usually that takes the form of changed behavior.
I think we've talked about this a little bit before where it's like everything is fine and then something changes and it's like, "Oh, what happened here?"
And the problem is that when it changes radically and dramatically, your brain goes, hey, wait a minute, there's something here.
Right.
It's when you get that frog in a pot
Mhm.
thing. And the analogy, as most of you know, and I don't know who conducted this experiment because it's really nasty.
I was gonna say the
Um,
poor frog.
yeah, how many frogs did they have to boil? The point is that the adage goes that if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, the frog will jump out going, hey, that's hot, you idiot. And if you put a frog in a pot of regular water and slowly turn up the heat, the frog will boil to death because he's not smart enough to realize that things have changed until it's too late.
Mhm.
And on remote teams and in hybrid teams to a degree as well, very often the frog is thoroughly cooked before we know there's a problem.
Right. We've talked about this on a previous episode about burnout, especially.
Yeah, exactly right. You don't know that somebody has passed their limit until they
They're putting in their
snap
2 weeks.
or they give their notice or whatever it is. Exactly right.
Yeah. So, do you have any examples of like how the Johari window can be used to improve communication? I mean, I know we just talked about like if you do improve your communication in general, this is going to make all of this better because you're going to know stuff. But like, is there something specifically that leaders can do?
Yeah, I think that it's really about asking questions, right? If there are two things: asking questions and being transparent. You have to ask questions because, and Kevin is well known for saying this, and I have plagiarized him shamelessly, which is your boss has a lot of talents. Reading your mind is not one of them.
Right. Yeah, we are not mind readers. I say that
We
a
are
lot too.
not mind readers. Some of us are better than others.
Mhm.
Some of us pick up vibes or do the others are completely oblivious and we're going about our business.
And
You
some of
know,
that takes years to develop too.
it does, and it's partly having your improving your radar in general.
Mhm.
There's the length of the relationship and the depth and the solidity of the relationship with that individual person.
Mhm. And sometimes it's also, do you like them? Because if you like them, you're more willing to work on that relationship. And if you don't, well,
Well, exactly right. And here, when it goes to confirmation bias, so and so did that because they're having a bad day, versus so and so did that because, of course, they did, because
yeah,
that's how they are.
right.
So, we need to get better at asking questions. And you have to be very careful. Tone is critical when you're asking these questions. There is a fundamental difference between what were you thinking when you did that? What was going on?
Right.
Versus what were you thinking?
It's the goblet of fire. Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
There's two separate, there are two separate approaches to the exact same words.
right.
I because I tend to be grumpy and snarky, I try to avoid what were you thinking, even though that's a perfectly legitimate question. I want to know what led you to that decision or to take that action.
Right.
And it's a legitimate question,
Of
but
course.
it's very easily misinterpreted.
Yeah, it's way easier
So
to say something like, what was going on in your mind when this was happening than
I don't
something.
even go there. I try
Oh,
to go
really?
to what happened.
Oh, that makes sense. You have done that with me now that you
Just
say that.
I have done it with you. It's like what happened?
Yeah. And sometimes I'm
And
like, I screwed up.
well, but here's the thing, right? If I say what happened, your response gives me way more information than the question itself actually warrants, right?
Fair.
What you said, oh, well, I screwed up. Okay. So she knows that she did something wrong. I don't have to come down on her like a ton
Right.
of bricks. I have to figure out what happened and how do we help her do that better,
Hmm.
right? But if I say what happened and you start with the excuses, it was all Marlene's fault and you know how she is and blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's break that down.
Right. So I'm going to change gears a little bit, but are there drawbacks to using this framework in a remote setting?
I don't know that there are actual drawbacks to using it. I think that like so many things, we can use it to confirm what we already believe. When you're looking at any model, but
Right.
the Johari window is a very simple example of that. You need to be really honest about what you know and what you don't know,
Okay.
right? And well, they should know that because I told them
Well,
doesn't always carry a lot of weight. This gets to the transparency part of this, right?
mhm,
Which is, yes, I need to know what they're thinking, and I want as much information as I can glean so that I can treat this person appropriately. But are they trusting me? Have I made myself available? Have I given them enough information and evidence? It goes to the trust model that we've talked about so much on this show. That's such an important part of our courseware that, for trust to exist, you need to have proof of alignment and purpose, proof of competence, and proof of motives. And if you're not providing those things and being transparent, it's really easy for people to not pick up on signals or not interpret your actions correctly.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. So, I know we're coming up on our time, but are there, best practices or tips for leaders who might be listening to this going, okay, I need to use this model. How do I start?
Yeah, the first thing is take a look at the model and, just kind of get it in your, burn it into your cortex so that you can recall it when needed, or keep a copy handy somewhere.
Hmm.
A simple keep it on your computer so that you can call the graphic up when you need it.
Yeah. Tape it
Um,
to your wall, whatever you need to do, right?
whatever it takes, right? Whatever you got to do. I think that once you've done that, take an example. Take something that you're having trouble communicating with somebody on, and fill in the blanks.
That makes sense.
What do I know? What do I know for a fact?
Hmm.
What do I think I know, but I'm not entirely sure, right? What haven't I told that person? And maybe what information am I missing? And then use that to guide the conversation.
Yeah. That makes a ton
You
of
know,
sense.
we hear so much about um, constructive inquiry and all of those things, crucial conversations.
Mhm.
It's just a way to identify what do I need to share and what do I need to find out in order to understand and communicate with this person better.
That makes sense. As always, communication is the key to remote teams and remote work and so many things in life.
That's why we need things like models, right? Because we can say, well, you need to communicate better. Okay, Wayne, I'll get right on
Yeah. I was going to say, I have a whole story about when I learned about the disc model and blew my ever loving mind. Uh, but that's for a different day.
Well, maybe we need to tell that story soon.
I will add it to the list. And listeners, I want to thank you so much for listening to Long Distance Work Life. Wayne, thank you for this conversation too. I really hope that it was beneficial for our listeners. For show notes, transcripts, and other resources, make sure to visit longdistanceworklife.com. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. And while you're there, be sure to like and review. This helps us know what you love about our show. Feel free to contact us via email or LinkedIn with the links in our show notes and let us know you listened to this episode or suggest a topic for Wayne and I to tackle in a future episode. If you'd like to learn more about remote teams, order Wayne and Kevin Eichenberry's new book, The Long Distance Team. You can learn more at longdistanceteambook.com. Thanks for joining us, and as Wayne likes to say, don't let the weasels get you down.